Getting rich isn't easy, but it's actually surprisingly simple. Turns out pretty much every person who's ever built real, lasting wealth has followed the same basic three-stage pattern. And once you see that pattern, you realize there's a straight line from where you are right now to where you want to be. Okay, let's dive into this simple, repeatable guide. But first, we got to get on the same page. We need to define what being rich actually means. Because, look, if your mind immediately jumps to super yachts, private jets, and billion-dollar penthouses, that's not really what we're talking about today. The real goal is way more achievable and, honestly, way more valuable than all that stuff.
So let's just contrast these two ideas for a second. Over on one side, you've got the Instagram version of rich. It's all about external appearance, right? But what we're aiming for is real-world rich. And that's all about reaching a point where money is no longer a source of stress in your life. It doesn't dictate your decisions. It means you have this internal peace and the freedom to know that if life throws you a massive curveball, you're ready for it. That's the real prize.
So how do we get there? Well, we start with stage one, the foundation. Now, this is the non-negotiable mental groundwork. It doesn't even feel like a financial step, really, but trust me, it is the single most important one. You absolutely have to lay this foundation before any real progress can be made.
And what's so interesting here is this critical distinction. See, being broke is just a temporary financial state. It just means you don't have money right now. But being poor, that's an identity. That's when you start telling yourself stories about what's not possible for you. And if you carry that identity around, it doesn't matter what strategy you learn. You will find a way to self-sabotage. So, the crucial takeaway here is that you need to make 3 foundational shifts. And the best part is, you can start these today. It all begins with your identity, truly, deeply believing that wealth is available to you. Then, you've got to reset your relationship with money, seeing it not as something to spend, but as a tool to deploy. And finally, you have to actively curate your environment.
And this just illustrates so perfectly why that last point is so vital. Your environment, your daily routines, your workspace, the people you're around, it shapes your behavior way more than your good intentions ever will. You can't build wealth if you're constantly fighting your surroundings. You have to set things up so that discipline becomes the easy choice, not this constant uphill battle.
Okay, once that foundation is solid, we move to stage 2, doing the work. This is the action phase, and frankly, this is where most people fail. Not because it's super complicated, but because it's simple, and it requires a long-term effort that most people just aren't willing to commit to. Now, this stage requires patience, but a lot of people get the definition of patience completely wrong. See, patience isn't laziness. It's not about working some easy job and just passively waiting around to retire. No way. Real patience is action. It's being willing to work hard and move fast, with a real sense of urgency, over a very, very long period of time. It's consistent and active, not slow and passive.
This quote just perfectly captures the mindset you need. You need that urgency in your daily tasks, always moving, always improving. But you also need the patience to stick with it year after year, maybe even decade after decade. That combination, that is what builds real wealth.
So how do you actually do the work? Well, it really boils down to 4 key principles. First up, you have to choose the right path. This means finding a career with asymmetry, which is just a fancy way of saying your income isn't tied directly to the hours you put in. Think sales commissions or building a business, not just a simple hourly wage. Second, you have to dominate your domain. Become so unbelievably good that you're the obvious choice. This lets you focus on results because wealth is built on outcomes, not just effort. And finally, you have to be willing to reinvent yourself. The world changes and you've got to change with it.
And all of that incredible hard work brings us to stage 3, building wealth. This is where you convert that high income from stage 2 into actual, lasting financial security. But it takes an enormous amount of self-control. The entire stage is built on this one simple golden rule. You must earn more than you spend. That's it. This creates a surplus, and that surplus is the engine for everything that comes next. The temptation is to let your spending rise at the exact same speed as your income. But to build real wealth, you have to intentionally make that gap as wide as you possibly can. So here's the path to security, step by step. With that surplus, your very first move is to build an emergency fund.
That's 3 to 12 months of living expenses. Think of this as your financial fortress. Then, and only then, do you start investing for the long term. After that's rolling, you can start to diversify with other income streams. And finally, you have to protect everything you've built with the right systems and insurance.
And you have to remember this, getting rich is only half the battle. Staying rich takes just as much effort, if not more. You've got taxes, inflation, bad decisions, bad actors. They can all chip away at your wealth faster than you think. You have to actively defend what you've built.
So, let's say you've gone through all 3 stages. You've done it. You've built real-world wealth. You're rich enough. But the journey doesn't have to end there. In fact, there's a secret 4th stage we didn't mention at the beginning.
And the step for this final stage is incredibly simple. Keep going. You see, the beautiful thing about wealth is that once you have it, it becomes easier to expand than it was to create in the first place. You've earned your freedom from financial stress. Now you finally have the space to use money as the tool it was always meant to be.
So, the crucial idea we want to end on is this question. Once money is no longer the primary driver of your decisions, you are truly free. Free to build a life that actually aligns with your values, your goals, and your purpose. So the real question is, now that you're free,